This happened a few weeks ago. I'm 35 now, and I've been a freelance photographer for over a decade. I was on a road trip through Pennsylvania to capture the autumn scenery for a magazine feature. The leaves were vibrant, turning shades of orange and red. I felt nostalgic, driving through those winding back roads. I often sought solitude on these trips, far away from the noise of my city life. I've never stopped thinking about how strange things got. One evening, while cruising along a secluded stretch of road, I noticed an old hitchhiker. He had a weathered face and tattered clothes. I pulled over, feeling a strange pull to help him. He walked up to my window, and there was something unsettling about his eyes. They looked deep and endless. We exchanged a few words. He talked about the trees, and I nodded like I knew what he meant. Then he turned abruptly and walked into the woods, disappearing just like that. My heart raced, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The next day, I decided to explore a ghost town I had heard about. The streets were empty, and the buildings were falling apart. As I wandered, I saw flickering lights coming from a dilapidated motel. My curiosity got the better of me. I stepped inside, and the smell hit me first. It was musty, like something had been trapped there for years. The rooms were eerily preserved, filled with outdated photographs that seemed to watch me. I felt like I was intruding, visiting a place I didn't belong. I heard a soft voice behind me. A woman stood there claiming she had lived in the motel for years. I glanced around, trying to keep calm. I could hardly breathe. I asked her name, but when I searched my memory or the dusty records I had seen earlier, nothing matched. She just smiled and said she liked it there. Then she faded into one of the rooms, and I blinked and she was gone. I couldn't find the exit fast enough. After that, I drove for hours, not knowing where I was headed. I felt a chill whenever I thought of the woman. Who was she? I couldn't stop second-guessing myself. Maybe she was a ghost. Maybe I imagined her. Reality felt like it was slipping away. Then, a few nights later, I was reviewing the photos from the trip. Each picture seemed off, almost too bright. I jolted upright when I saw a figure in the corner of one of the shots. He looked familiar, like the hitchhiker. I didn't remember taking that picture. Maybe I was just seeing things. As I put the camera down, a voice whispered, "You're not alone." I turned quickly, but there was nobody there. My heart raced, and the walls felt like they were closing in. It felt wrong, but I couldn't tell if it was real or if I was losing my mind. What I do know is this. Even now, the hitchhiker and the woman in the motel linger in my thoughts. I can't shake them off. I wonder if I'll ever find out what really happened. The following day, I tried to regain my focus. I needed to clear my head, so I decided to head to a different part of Pennsylvania, away from the ghost town and the memories haunting me. I drove until the trees turned sparse, replaced by open fields and rolling hills. Maybe I could find a new subject to photograph, something that would distract me. But every time I looked down at my camera, the faces of that woman and the hitchhiker flashed in my mind. I stopped for coffee at a small diner with an old neon sign flickering outside. The place was almost empty, just a few locals chatting softly at the counter. As I sat down, trying to shake off the unease, an old man approached me. He had a long gray beard and wore clothes that looked equally outdated. "Nice day for a drive, isn't it?" he asked with a cracked voice, settling into the seat across from mine. "Yeah, I guess," I replied hesitantly. "Best time of year to see the colors." He leaned in closer, eyes narrowing. "But it's also when the shadows come out." I raised my eyebrows, unsure if he was joking. I stirred my coffee absently as he spoke about his days growing up in these woods. He mentioned strange happenings, like people disappearing without a trace. I couldn't shake the feeling of dread rising in my chest. The woman in the motel. The hitchhiker. I felt trapped between the stories of the past and my own recent experiences. "Ever see a ghost?" he asked suddenly, fixing me with an intense stare. My heart stalled. No, just... I trailed off, caught between explaining myself or brushing it off. Just weird stuff, I guess. He nodded knowingly, then leaned back in his chair and said, "Just make sure you don't follow them." "Follow who?" I asked, confusion washing over me. "The lost," he replied grimly. "Once they have your attention, it's hard to turn away. You'll want to see more, and then—" He stopped abruptly, looking over my shoulder. "Believe me, you don't want to go down that road." I turned to look, but no one was there. Just the diner's door swinging in the breeze, revealing nothing but the empty parking lot. I looked back at him, ready to ask what he meant, but he lifted a finger, shushing me with a knowing smile. The moment felt charged, like something was about to spill over into chaos. After finishing my coffee, I paid and stepped outside, the air colder than before. I glanced around, half expecting to see the old man watching from the window. Instead, I was greeted by the silence of the parking lot. Just as I was climbing into my car, I felt a familiar sensation, eyes on me. I turned my head, scanning the tree line, the sensation gripping my heart. That's when I saw it again. The hitchhiker, standing at the edge of the woods, watching. This time, he wasn't turning away. He just stood there, staring. I could feel my pulse quickening as panic set in. I didn't want to know what came next, but I couldn't tear my eyes away. Then everything went dark. I woke up in my car, drenched in cold sweat. The steering wheel dug into my palms, and my heart pounded in my chest. I blinked, still disoriented. Had I really just blacked out? I glanced around, taking in the stillness of the parking lot. The diner stood silent behind me, its neon sign pulsing as if to remind me where I'd been. For a moment I thought about the old man's warning, shadows, the lost following. It all felt like a cruel game I didn't sign up for. I turned my gaze back to the tree line, the sun filtering through the branches, but the hitchhiker was gone. A wave of relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. I started the engine, but it sputtered for a second, as if unsure about waking up. I turned the radio on, desperate for some background noise to shake off the dread. Static filled the air, broken only by snippets of a song that seemed familiar yet distant. I took a deep breath and pulled out of the parking spot, deciding to put as much distance between me and the diner as possible. The road stretched ahead, lined with golden cornfields and occasional patches of trees. Each mile felt like a step away from whatever had just happened. But the deeper I drove into the countryside, the more I felt something was still off. I couldn't shake the sense that I was being watched. Soon I spotted a small roadside stand. A cheerful sign advertised fresh produce and baked goods. My stomach grumbled and I figured I could use a snack. Pulling over, I stepped out of my car. The sun was bright, too bright. It hurt my eyes. I approached the stand, where an elderly woman sorted through baskets of apples. "Can I help you, dear?" she asked with a toothy smile. I nodded, glancing at the apples. "What do you recommend?" "Try the Honey Crisps," she replied, her eyes narrowing slightly. "They're the sweetest of the bunch." As I reached for one, she added, "You look a bit pale, honey. You feeling all right?" "Yeah, I'm fine," I said, forcing a smile. But she didn't look convinced. "What brings you out here?" she asked, her voice dropping an octave. I hesitated. I didn't want to explain. I didn't want to think about the hitchhiker or the old man's words. "Just driving around," I said. It felt like a lie. She nodded knowingly, then leaned closer. "You be careful out there. Sometimes it's better not to see what's lurking in the shadows." A chill ran down my spine. It was the same warning, but from someone who seemed harmless, who was just trying to sell apples. I paid for a bag and edged away, glancing back at her. She was watching me, a smile still plastered on her face, but her eyes held something. Concern, maybe? Or was it something darker? I climbed back into my car, unease settling in again. As I pulled away, I kept glancing at the rearview mirror, half expecting to see the woman standing there waving goodbye. Instead, I saw only the stretch of road behind me, with the cornfield swaying in the wind. But then, just as I reached the next bend, something flashed in the corner of my eye. It was a figure, a woman in white, just standing at the edge of a field. I slammed on the brakes, heart hammering. I squinted. The woman turned her head, her gaze locking onto mine, and just like that, she was gone. I blinked, searching frantically for her, but the field was empty now, as if she had never been there. Every instinct in me screamed to keep driving, but I couldn't. I needed to know. What was happening? Who were these people, and why did they keep coming back into my life? I closed my eyes for a second, grounding myself. When I opened them again, something felt different. The air shifted. I thought I saw movement in the trees ahead, a flicker of white. Then I saw it, a figure stepping out from behind a tree. This one was familiar. It was him again, the hitchhiker. I gasped as panic surged within me. Something was very wrong. My heart raced as I stared at the hitchhiker. He was even closer now, standing in the middle of the road, waiting. I knew I had to make a choice. I could drive past him, but I also sensed that if I didn't figure this out, I'd never feel safe again. "Hey!" I shouted, rolling down my window. "What do you want?" The hitchhiker took a half-step toward my car, his expression unreadable. "You saw her, didn't you?" he said, his voice low and gravelly. "Saw who?" I replied, though part of me knew exactly what he meant. "The woman in white," he said, his gaze unwavering. "It's just one of many. You'll see more if you keep driving." He seemed almost serene, as if he reveled in this chaos. A surge of irritation bubbled inside me. "Look, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just driving. I don't want any trouble." He smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. "Trouble finds you, whether you want it or not. You already crossed paths with them." I slammed my palm against the steering wheel. "I don't have time for this. Just get out of the road." The hitchhiker stepped back, but his movement was slow, deliberate. "You can't outrun what's following you," he called out, tilting his head. "Not in this place." With that, I peeled out, barely caring about the gravel that kicked up behind me. Panic twisted my stomach. I didn't even care where I was going anymore. I just needed to get away. As I sped along the winding road, trying to shake that encounter, images of the woman in white surged in my mind. Who was she? What did she want? Deep down, a thread of connection wove through my thoughts, linking the hitchhiker and the woman. I wanted to scream. Instead, I focused on the road and tried to ignore the gnawing unease that had settled heavily in my chest. Miles passed, but the oppressive feeling never lessened. Fields turned into clusters of trees, and the sun dipped lower in the sky. As darkness approached, the shadows seemed to stretch and elongate, creeping closer to the edges of the road. Then, something on the shoulder of the road caught my eye. It was a small wooden sign, weathered and barely legible. I slowed down, drawn to it. It read, "Beware, the lost wander here." I felt a shiver travel down my spine. I glanced at the rearview mirror again, half expecting to see the hitchhiker looming behind me. Nothing. But the trees whispered as if they were alive, and I could have sworn I heard distant laughter. I shook my head, convincing myself it was just my mind playing tricks. But I couldn't ignore the feeling of being followed. It wasn't just a sensation, it was an absolute presence pressing in all around me. As I continued to drive, those fleeting figures, a woman in white and a hitchhiker, echoed in my mind. I couldn't help but ponder. Was there something deeper at play? That's when it hit me. Something in the back of my mind, an urgency compelling me to pull over again. But fear held me captive, and as I fought with that impulse, I knew I couldn't ignore it. If I didn't find the answers soon, I might become just another shadow. I drove on, the shadows thickening around me. Every bend seemed to distort reality, and the trees loomed larger, shapes blending together like a dark tapestry. I was hyper-aware of every little sound, the hum of the engine, the crunching pebbles beneath my tires, and that ever-present whisper of the wind. My heart drummed loudly against my ribcage, echoing my escalating fear. It wasn't long before I spotted something else on the roadside. My headlights illuminated a shape, a figure standing still in the darkness. I felt my stomach twist. Not again. I pulled over, reluctant yet drawn to it. As I approached, I realized it was a weathered old man. He wore a tattered jacket and a gray beard that hung down below his chin. He raised a hand, palm out, as I drew closer. "Can you help me?" he called out, his voice a raspy whisper. "What do you need?" I asked, cautious. He looked around nervously. "I'm trying to find my way. The road lost me. It happens to everyone here." Something about him felt strangely familiar. My mind flashed to the hitchhiker's warning. I took a step back. "I'm sorry, but I should really be going." "Wait," he insisted, his eyes growing wide. "You don't understand. They are watching you. You have to be careful." Panic spiked in me again. "Who's watching? What do you mean?" His expression shifted from urgency to sorrow. "The wandering souls. They take those who don't heed the warnings." He pointed toward the woods behind him as if to illustrate his point. I swallowed hard. "Look, I don't believe in this stuff. I just want to drive home." His gaze turned intense, piercing through the fear fogging my thoughts. "But home isn't safe anymore, is it?" A chill washed over me. Home didn't feel safe. Not now, not with the memories of that woman haunting me. I shook my head, needing to rid myself of these thoughts. As I turned back to the car, I heard him call after me, "Stay on the paths, don't stray." I climbed into the driver's seat, heart racing, and locked the door. I needed to get out of there fast. I took a deep breath and pressed the gas pedal hard. The engine roared to life and I sped away, the old man disappearing in the rearview mirror. But the unease lingered. I couldn't shake the feeling I was being hunted. I glanced at the woods, shadows shifting and reshaping like restless spirits. Then, in the corner of my eye, I caught movement. I turned my head quickly, and there, standing in the flickering light of my headlights, was the woman in white. Her long, flowing dress glowed even in the darkness. I slammed on the brakes, the tires screeching as I stared in disbelief. She turned her gaze to me, her face calm yet haunting. I was frozen in place, understanding dawning. She had been waiting, and now I had to decide whether to confront what I had been running from or continue to flee. My instinct screamed at me to drive away, to just turn the wheel and leave her behind. But my body wouldn't cooperate. I was trapped in my own fear as the woman stepped closer. Her expression was unreadable, like she was both a part of the night and entirely separate from it. "Why are you here?" I croaked, my voice barely a whisper. She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she tilted her head, studying me, then finally spoke, her voice flowing like a gentle breeze. "You seek answers, yet you fear the truth." "Answers?" I echoed, feeling the weight of her words. "I just want to go home." Her gaze intensified, the twilight around her deepening. "Home isn't a place anymore. It's what you carry with you." I shook my head. I didn't want to dive deeper into this cryptic exchange. I wanted to scream at her to get out of my way, to leave me alone in my ignorance. Instead, I felt a strange pull, as though she was unraveling a thread in my mind I hadn't noticed before. "What do you want from me?" I demanded, my voice stronger now, pressing back against the tide of dread. "They are calling you," she said, her tone shifting. "You can't ignore them." With that, she turned her back to me and walked toward the tree line, her dress billowing like mist in the night. It was as though she dissolved into the shadows, blending into the darkness that seemed to ripple and dance all around her. I could feel my pulse quickening as anxiety squeezed my chest. This was not right. I had to leave. I could almost hear the distance calling to me, but my mind raced with questions. Who were they? The woman? The old man? The wandering souls he warned me about? Time slipped away, seconds stretched into what felt like an eternity. Then, the quiet was interrupted by a rustling in the bushes. I turned sharply, squinting into the darkness. My instincts kicked in. I needed to be alert, ready to react. I reached for my phone, tense fingers fumbling through my pockets as I realized I hadn't seen a single car since pulling over. I cursed under my breath, the realization sinking deep. If anything were to happen, I was all alone out there. Then, as if answering my unspoken fear, a low growl emanated from within the trees. It was dark, but I could make out a pair of fiery eyes glaring at me. My breath caught in my throat. Something was watching me. Suddenly, the woman in white re-emerged, stepping into view like a ghost summoned from the depths. "You shouldn't be here," she warned, her voice echoing in the stillness. I was frozen again, heart pounding painfully. "What is it?" I managed to whisper. "Help will come for you, but only if you seek it," she said softly. And that's when I saw it. Something large was moving between the trees, its form barely distinguishable in the shadows. Panic surged. I had to act now. The road back home felt like a trap, and it was closing in on me. Without thinking, I slammed the car door shut and bolted toward the tree line. If I was going to face whatever was out there, I would do it on my terms. Desperation pushed me forward as I entered the unknown, but the ground beneath me felt unstable, and I knew something was following. The branches whipped at my face as I stumbled into the woods. I could hear the soft crunch of leaves behind me, moving closer. Whatever it was not going to let me escape easily. I pushed deeper into the underbrush, adrenaline rushing through my veins. I didn't know where I was going. It felt like a maze of shadows. I caught glimpses of the glowing eyes, darting among the trees, always just out of sight. "What are you?" I shouted, half hoping for an answer, half terrified of what might respond. In a flash, the growling ceased. An unnerving silence enveloped me, thick and heavy. I paused, ears straining to catch any sound, my heart pounding in my ears. The stillness felt wrong, like a trap set to spring at any moment. Then I saw her again, the woman in white, standing a few paces ahead. She looked different this time, more ethereal, more urgent. "This way," she urged, her voice firm. "They cannot reach you here." "Who can't?" I asked, trying to sound brave, but my voice trembled. "Focus. Trust me." I hesitated, but the darkness behind me felt suffocating. I took a tentative step forward toward her, and the tension in the air seemed to ease slightly. "Where are we going?" I pressed, but all she did was extend her hand, beckoning me closer. I closed the distance, grabbing her wrist instinctively as she turned and ran. The ground shifted, yielding under my feet as I followed her deeper into the thicket. Vines and roots snagged at me, but I couldn't stop. I had to trust her. I could hear the growls again, low and menacing, but they sounded fainter. We were moving away from whatever was haunting me. Suddenly we burst into a clearing, bathed in moonlight. The glow seemed to drive the shadows back, creating a sanctuary amidst the confusion. I released her wrist and took a breath to steady myself. "What is this place?" "It's a border," she answered, glancing anxiously back at the trees. "A place between worlds." "Worlds?" The word sent chills down my spine. "Yes, yours and theirs," she said, her eyes darting. "But it's not safe for you anymore. You must face them." "Face who?" I was growing increasingly frustrated. This was all too much. Vague warnings and nonsensical phrases. Then, across the clearing, a tall figure emerged from the shadows. It was difficult to make out due to the brightness of the moon behind it, but an overwhelming presence pressed down on me. The growls intensified from the other side of the trees, as if inviting the figure to enter. I instinctively stepped back, but the woman grabbed my arm, her grip ironclad. "Do not look away. You need to understand." I squinted against the light, trying to clarify the dark shape. It took a step closer, and suddenly, everything changed. In the blink of an eye, it lunged. I barely had time to react. "Run!" I shouted, pulling away from the woman, adrenaline taking over. I raced back toward the trees, my instincts screaming at me to move. But the shadows didn't just dance behind me. They lunged forward, ready to claim me. And in that chaotic moment, I realized I had just signed up for a new chapter in this nightmare. As I sprinted back into the darkness of the woods, panic flooded my mind. The woman in white called after me, her voice muffled by the trees, but I couldn't stop. I could feel the shadows creeping behind me, breathing down my neck. I dodged branches, my heart hammering as I stumbled over roots. Each step felt unsteady, like I was on a tightrope over an abyss. The moon had vanished behind clouds, leaving me in complete blackness. I lost track of the sound. The growls had blended into the rustling leaves, and all I could hear was the rush of blood in my ears. Then there it was again. The woman, standing firmly in the path ahead. "Stop!" she commanded, her voice cutting through my terror. I skidded to a halt, nearly tripping over a gnarled root. "It's not safe," I gasped, trying to catch my breath. "They're coming." She shook her head, fear mingling with a strange sense of calm. "No, they won't follow you here." Confusion churned in my stomach. "How can you be sure?" My instincts screamed for me to run, but I was caught between the urge to flee and the pull of her gaze. "Trust me. I'm here to help." Just as I started to reply, a low growl erupted from the darkness behind me. I clenched my fists, ready to bolt again. "What do you know about them?" But she didn't answer. Her attention was fixed over my shoulder, eyes wide with alarm. I turned slowly, dread pooling in my gut. The figure was there again, less defined but just as imposing. The glow from its form cast eerie shadows around us, twisting the trees into grotesque shapes. I couldn't see its face, but I felt its gaze piercing through me. The woman's grip tightened on my arm. "Do not engage. They feed on your fear." A surge of panic flooded through me. I considered her words, but they seemed impossible. "You want me to face something that feeds on fear? You have a choice," she said, her voice steady but urgent. "You can either be prey, or you can take control." Her words lingered in the air. Just then, a rustle from the darkness caught my attention. I thought I saw movement. My breath caught in my throat. Something was shifting, not just behind me, but within myself. What if she was right? Fear had gripped me like a vice. Maybe if I faced whatever was stalking me, I could break free from its clutches. I straightened, despite the pounding in my chest. "Okay. I won't let them win." The woman's expression softened. "Good, but you must act fast." Before I could ask her what to do next, shadows lunged out of the darkness, eyes glinting with malice. It became clear I'd no longer be just a terrified witness. I was about to step into the fight myself. As the first shadow leaped at me, everything went dark. I blinked, finding myself in a place that felt like a void. The darkness was thick around me, almost tangible. But I could still hear the growls, low and threatening, echoing in the distance. Panic gripped me once more, but this time I could feel a heat rising within my chest. A determination was forming. As the darkness began to shift, I recalled the woman's words. They fed on fear. I couldn't let them have that power over me. I gathered myself, focusing on the sound of my heartbeat instead of the growls. I could feel something brushing against me, part of the darkness, or something more sinister. With that thought, a sudden flash of light broke through the blackness. It was faint, but it illuminated a figure standing nearby. I squinted through the gloom and recognized the woman in white. She was no longer bound by the shadows. Instead, she stood tall, exuding an ethereal glow. "Focus," she urged, her voice cutting through the haze. "You can do this." I took a deep breath, pushing aside the dread that clawed at me. "What do I have to do?" "Confront them," she replied, nodding towards the shadows swirling around me. "Show them you're not afraid." I nodded, though doubt crept into my mind. "But what if I fail?" "Then we'll figure it out together." The reassurance in her voice steadied me. I turned towards the direction of the growls. They sounded closer now, more insistent. Other figures began to emerge from the darkness, more shadows, shifting and changing shapes. I could see their eyes glinting in the dim light, hungry and relentless. I stepped forward, forcing myself to look straight at them. "You have no power over me." The shadows hesitated, their growls softening into confused whispers. I felt the energy shift, as if my words were unraveling their hold. It was strange, as if the deeper I delved into my own fear, the more it faded. Just then, the woman beside me raised a hand, channeling her light into a radiant beam. "This is your strength. Embrace it." I closed my eyes and reached for that rising warmth inside me. I thought of how terrified I'd been minutes ago, how easy it was to fall into despair. That energy blossomed into courage, flowing into my voice. "You will not take me." When I opened my eyes, the shadows recoiled, as if repelled by an unseen force. They writhed around us, still lurking on the edges, but their power diminished. Suddenly there was another flicker, and the ground beneath me shifted. The darkness began to break apart, revealing an expanse of light. But as the shadows pulled back, I saw something unexpected hiding behind them. A massive figure looming, dark and solid, exuding a sinister aura that sent chills down my spine. It stepped forward as if to reclaim its lost ground, and I stumbled back. "What is that?" I cried out, fear creeping back in. The woman's eyes widened, an expression of urgency unfolding on her face. "We need to go. This is only the beginning." Before I could react, the massive figure lunged, consuming the space between us. In that heartbeat, I realized the fight wasn't over. Everything I had done until now had been nothing but the first step in a game far larger than I'd imagined. And as the shadows closed in, I felt a wave of dread wash over me once again. But this time, I was ready to face it. I stumbled through the remnants of the darkness, the remnants of fear twisting my insides as I turned to see the woman. Her glow illuminated the space around us, but the shadows were relentless, moving like thick smoke, whispering threats that coiled deep within me. "Stay close," she urged, her voice firm against the chaotic energy swirling around us. I felt the weight of something immense behind me, and I didn't need to look to know the silhouette stretched with a towering menace. We ran, propelled by an instinct to survive. The shifting shadows began to close in, their ominous growls rising in volume, echoing in the corners of my mind. I could feel myself about to succumb again, fear clawing at my throat, but the woman took my hand tighter. "Focus on the light," she shouted, guiding us toward the beam that cut through the dark. I forced myself to concentrate, picturing warmth and clarity, images of sunlight pooling across the ground in crisp autumn hues. "You will not claim me," I yelled, conviction carrying my voice beyond the consuming shadows. In that moment of clarity, I felt the warmth building within me once again, unyielding and resolute. We burst into a clearing bathed in surreal light, the shadows momentarily halted by the sudden shift in environment. Breathless, I looked around, searching for some hint of safety. "Where do we go?" I gasped. "The edge," the woman replied, her gaze darting toward an opening between the trees. "We have to break through!" With renewed desperation we pushed onward, but I could sense the looming figure slinking just behind the barrier of light, planning its next move. Rushing through the space, I focused only forward. The growls grew louder, the darkness slithering around us like vines. One last push surged within me, and I knew I couldn't let them take me back. I heard the woman's voice, melodic yet haunting, as she chanted words that resonated with the very air we breathed. "Stand strong. Don't look back." But I did. In a flicker, I caught sight of the creature, the towering mass surging through the remnants of the light, dark and undefined, yet wholly present. Its many eyes glinted like shards of obsidian, consuming everything in its vicinity. I felt the dread grip at my throat once again, but this time I remembered my own heartbeat. I remembered the warmth that the woman had helped awaken. "Not tonight," I cried, defiantly turning back, channeling every ounce of defiance I possessed. "Not any more." My voice became a shield against the dark as I drew from the growing flicker of light that illuminated my chest. I stepped forward, breaking apart the veil of shadows that threatened to swallow us both. With one final battle cry, I wielded the very essence of hope that resided within me. The shadows surged, recoiling as if stung by light itself. Their roar turned into a strangled howl, an angry burst of a storm caught beneath a shifting tide. The woman beside me smiled, and in that fleeting expression I sensed a bond forged not just by this moment, but perhaps by countless stories woven in the fabric of existence itself. "Together," she urged, and I drew closer, feeling her pull anchoring me. With every shout of defiance, our light grew stronger, ripping through the darkness, illuminating the path ahead. The figure writhed in agony, twisting like smoke before unraveling, dissolving like an old memory. But something eerie lingered. As the last traces of the shadows faded, I could feel the air shift, a small, chill wind brushing against my face. A lingering sense of unease swarmed like echoes against the edges of my memory, the flickers of the hitchhiker's gaze, the weariness of the old man, the sorrow in the woman's smile. "We did it," I exclaimed, breathless with a mix of disbelief and triumph. But a late-hanging question tethered itself to my heart. I turned to the woman, my eyes wide with uncertainty. "What will happen now? Are they gone?" She looked toward the emerging light beyond the clearing. "Some may have departed, but others linger. They never fully vanish." Her expression turned thoughtful, one hand gently brushing through the air. "You must decide what you wish to carry forward. Will I see them again?" I asked, tentatively, dread creeping back in, realizing the shadows might not, in fact, be finished with me. "Perhaps," she said, her voice light yet heavy with implication. "They reside in the whispers of the winds, waiting for those who see them." As she spoke, the scenery around us began to fade into gentle nightfall, light dimming into hues of dusk. Everything shimmered, blurring at the edges. Will I ever be free? It felt all too clear that my life would never return to what it was. Leaving those haunted memories behind, as elusive as shadows themselves, might prove impossible. Her gaze remained unwavering, a delicate mix of compassion and wisdom. "Freedom is found in confronting what frightens you. Remember, the greatest battles are those fought within." And just like that, she began to fade, dissipating into the glow of twilight permeating the woods. "Face them when you encounter them," she urged softly. "You will know how and when to seek the light." As darkness stretched out in front of me, I felt the lingering touch of her hand, the warmth of her glow, a tether to the courage I would need moving forward. The path ahead was uncertain. Questions remained, shadows flickered just out of sight. But now, I stood steady. I understood the danger, and I felt the certainty that the power to face it rested within me, regardless of the darkness that may come. And in that awareness, I began to walk forward, embracing the uncertainty of what lay ahead. The woman's words echoed in my mind. The invitation to confront would come again, and I would recognize it when it did, ready to stand firm.